Hello there, guys. Welcome back to my channel for your latest bit of Chelsea transfer news in the summer of 2024, where Chelsea, well, could be doing many things, could be doing few things, and could be doing things that some of us may or may not be happy with. There's a lot to get through because I've been traveling the last few days, so there's a few things to catch up on as well. But we are joined by the man himself, Mr. Pys. Pys, thank you for coming back on. It's been a minute, so I'm very glad to have you back on. Take a look at Nathan Gissing's retweet, Josh said. Pys, do you already know what Nathan Gissing retweeted, or do I need to look it up?
No, it's about Duran. So yeah, the interest there.
Oh yeah, there you go. Yeah. Well, Duran does certainly seem to be one of those names that we do need to think about or look at anyway. But there is a lot to get through. And Pys, first of all, like I say, thank you for coming back on. How do you feel about Chelsea at the moment? Obviously, we had our little like peak interest of all of a sudden we sacked Poch. All of a sudden we brought Maresca in, who was supposed to be unveiled to the media last week. Then wasn't, for God knows what reason. Are they going to do it during the Euros? Are they just going to do it this week still? Who knows? But now, obviously, we're into the thick of things of transfer news. Still plenty of players that will and might go out, whether that's Broja, whether that's Chalobah, potentially Gallagher, many of those, but also signings. So where do you stand on it? Do you feel optimistic looking ahead to next season? Because that's one of the things that I like. You know, I'm a little bit less optimistic than others at the moment because I'm like, okay, we're losing Thiago Silva, so that for me makes the squad worse. Then a lot of the signings that we will make the squad better in terms of talent, but we'll just add more people in that are very young, very inexperienced, and will probably take a little bit of time to start being good. So yeah, and just with the expectation of supposedly expecting top 4 next season, that's where I have a little bit of a worry, but obviously which transfers we make could change everything. So before we get into detailed rumors and stuff like that, just an overall picture from you. Like, how do you feel about it? A bit nervous, a bit excited, like positive? Where do you stand on it looking ahead to next season, bro?
In terms of the striker or just everything in general?
Just in general, the team and who we may be looking at. Will our squad look stronger? Are you concerned that it will actually not look stronger, which obviously would be a bit concerning?
Yeah, I think it's going to be an interesting summer. I think we haven't talked too much together about Maresca, but Maresca, I'm more excited than I was. I think previously. I think speaking to a lot of people that have watched him and stuff like that, watched his games, Leicester fans, but also like other experts who have followed his career closely. It's maybe a little bit more excited and optimistic, but at the end of the day, I think this is a win-win situation for us because. If we go for another horrible season as fans, then hopefully those sporting directors will get out of the club next summer if we have to make another change. So it's a lot of pressure on them. So, Maresca is an interesting option. I think, his style of play suits the squad. I think that's the one good thing I think they've done is that at least on the base of things, the likes of Thomas Frank and McKenna I had major question marks over, whereas someone like De Zerbi and Maresca who were linked with us, I'd much rather prefer them because at least I think they fit their style of football fits what we're trying to do and fits how a lot of our technical players, unlike Pochettino as well. So I'm a little bit optimistic, but at the same time, I think the summer window is going to be a big one because I think we have a real good chance to solidify a top 4 place next season with some really good signings. But it could also go the other way. I think as well, we need to reduce the injuries. We need to look at that department in terms of medically or training wise. Hopefully Maresca will be able to improve that. He's got a better injury record coaching teams than someone like Pochettino. But yeah, I mean, it's an interesting one because on the flip side, you've got the club who are briefing that our squad currently is good enough to get top 4. I actually believe that as well, especially if we don't have injuries. But at the end of the day, like we're starting all over again, So in terms of a manager, we got a new pre-season. How quickly do they adapt to the system that Maresca's going to implement?
Because it's very different to what we played last season.
I know
the whole inverting fullback, there could be similarities to the last few weeks of the season, but still, as a grand scheme of things, the system is quite different. So it's a weird one. Like even last season, you and me remember, like we were actually surprisingly excited after pre-season because we saw good things from Poch. And then the season started and we didn't see any of that anymore, really. So even pre-season is going to be so difficult to really judge because, like you said earlier, right, with Maresca, like there are things to be excited about. I think both of us talked to a lot of people, did a lot of our research, and there's certainly things to be optimistic and excited, or at least positively curious about. But the thing is, think back when we got Potter, those things were also there. You know, there was also things that when you did your research about who he is, what he does, there was also things to be optimistic about then. So clearly, there's no guarantee just because there's things to be optimistic about that it necessarily works out. But you know, we're Chelsea fans, so we're not going to sit here and say from day one, well, that's going to be terrible. So we will be hopeful. We will try, you know, just be optimistic that things work out, really. But like you said there, it's just the top 4 thing. It's just we're 3 years into into the 3rd season of this ownership now. And we're essentially the squad is in a different position, but in terms of like the transition, we're like, tell me whether you agree with that, but I feel like we're like late, if that makes sense. Like we should be like, because we're 3 years into it or into the 3rd season, that's why the top 4 is kind of like the very bare minimum. But when you're being realistic about it, I'm not saying top 4 can't happen. Absolutely not. It can. But it just seems like to put the squad of so many young players with such an inexperienced manager, to put them into the position where, okay, you need to get top 4 now. This is purely a consequence of how badly the last 2 years have gone. Because I think when you're being totally trying to be objective about it, the squad and manager combination can get top 4. But do you feel that they're in a position where it's fair to expect it from them? Because it could happen. But I feel like if it doesn't happen, that doesn't necessarily mean that Maresca or the players all necessarily just did a bad job, because they just think where our squad is. Yes, it's talented, but is it ready to compete? Because our biggest problem wasn't our peak performance. We could turn up. Even under Poch last season, we had really good performances. The problem is that we never managed to be good multiple games in a row, essentially, and especially not for multiple months in a row. And I'm like, do you feel that that's realistic, that will happen? Like that we will become so much more consistent? That I know at the end top 4 wasn't that far off, but you can't expect next season the bottom of the top 4 to be as bad as they were this season either. So if they're not, it's like, how do you feel about it? Do you think it's fair to expect it from them? Again, I like from a club's standards point of view, of course it is. But as the individuals, the players and the manager, like, what do you think?
I think it's an interesting one, because I think the Premier League's getting a little bit overrated, to be honest, in terms of like last season, the past few seasons. Like I feel like top 4 is not that hard to get if you're semi-consistent. Like look at Aston Villa last season, look at Spurs. Like we were not worse than either of them teams. Our squad was not worse, in my opinion. Like obviously we were worse consistent wise, but our squad's not worse than any of theirs. So maybe they have more ready and experienced players, but Chelsea, I think I think the big thing for me is how quickly do they take to Maresca's system? Because if they take quickly to it, and it takes, you know, pre-season and then maybe a month into the season, you know, maybe the first few games are a bit sort of hit and miss, but after then we kind of, you know, we've got it now. We're sort of clicking. A lot of the players are going to be in year 2 now of this project together, so it's not going to be, you know, a lot of them are not going to be starting from fresh. They have played a season together. I think most of the starting 11 would probably stay the same, especially, and we will talk about striker. I mean, Jackson may still start, you know, so even up front, you know, you may have not much of a change. Maybe Olise comes in, but I don't really think this starting 11 will change that much, to be honest with you.
The
maybe
change will be Nkunku hopefully starting, who's not started before, I guess, but
maybe a couple of changes here and there. But I think what's going to be nice is that we're going to have that sort of stability. I think we're not going to make so many signings that's disrupted us, and I think has delayed a lot of the progress so far. With that being said,
so you're confident on that we won't kind of overdo it again on signings and kind of
I am confident.
Exactly an issue with that again, because I worry about that a little bit.
No, I think we're going to be. I don't think we're going to sign as many players this month, and if we do, I don't necessarily think they're going to be starters. Like from how I see it now, unless we go for someone that breaks out of the Euros like we did with Enzo, I feel like maybe our big signing will be Olise for this summer, especially because, you know, the strikers we've been linked to aren't really, I mean, most of them I wouldn't classify as someone to come in ahead of Jackson or even Nkunku, because I've spoke to a lot of Leicester fans and even Ben Jacobs, who's, you know, covers Leicester a lot, watches all their games. They've all said that Nkunku's best position under Maresca would be as a false 9. And I said to them, well, you know, he played up top for Pochettino. It didn't really work. He said, nah, forget that. Like, it's going to be completely different under Maresca, different system and stuff. So that's something else to think about as well when we go for a striker. But yeah,
Absolutely.
I think we can get top four. Whether it's fair to expect it of him, I'm undecided. I'm really undecided. I want to say yes, it is fair, but it's the first season, and it's like for me, we still haven't signed. We still haven't got enough leadership or
That's what I mean. And
experience
losing
in our
Thiago
squad.
Silva on top of that, that's
Yeah,
why I'm just like, everybody's just thinking we're just going to be better. And obviously you're right in terms of, especially that it's going to be the second, for some of them the third season. That will obviously play its part. And you saw that across the last season. Like, obviously you could say Poch did a decent job to some extent as well. But the fact that we got better as the season went on, I don't think necessarily, like, it could have been Manan as the manager. That was an automatic process that was always going to happen when the squad is essentially players that have never met each other before last preseason. So then it only makes sense that the longer they play together, the better they get together, right? So no matter what the manager really does, that is almost a natural like progression that happens, if that makes sense. But yeah, no, I do absolutely hear you. Brought it up there. Let's start on that conversation, because this is kind of, the getting everything rolling at the moment. Other than Olise, and we will get to Olise in a little bit, guys. But the exclusive from Fabrizio Romano earlier today was that Benjamin Sesko has decided to stay at RB Leipzig and sign a new contract on improved terms. Decision made for talented striker, similar to what Haaland decided back in the days at Dortmund. Sesko will stay at Leipzig with a new gentleman agreement for future exit. Obviously, if people are not aware, it was mostly ourselves and Arsenal looking to sign him. A bit of interest from Manchester United as well, as far as I know, but mostly Arsenal and ourselves. Would he have picked us over Arsenal anyway? I doubt it. My honest thoughts are, well, both are in London, so we don't have that benefit. And then unless we're paying a lot more, which I doubt we're in a position to do, and especially with our wage structure, why would anyone pick us over Arsenal right now? I don't know. I mean, I'm sure there's plenty of reasons for some of these individuals, but as a purely from a sporting perspective, I don't really see why you would. So you could argue this doesn't really change anything, because maybe we wouldn't have got him regardless. But Pies, first and foremost, obviously a few weeks ago we were like, okay, we're trying to get Osimhen. Then we got the news, okay, we're not going for Osimhen. Then everyone was like, okay, seems like we're going for Sesko instead. Now Sesko isn't happening either. So first of all, thoughts on the transfer targets kind of going one step lower and lower and lower, if you will. But before we get into potential options outside of Sesko, let's talk about, not getting Osimhen, not getting Sesko. What do you make of that? Are you okay with that? Are you in a position where you're like, well, this is what we needed, an upgrade at striker, and now we're not getting that again, and that's worrying? Or do you think, well, with the way Jackson played last season, there is also a case to be made that he deserves a second season? Because I know a lot of people have made this comparison, right, to Didier Drogba, but in terms of numbers, Nicholas Jackson had a better first season at Chelsea than Didier Drogba did. And let's not forget, in Didier Drogba's first season, Chelsea won the league, didn't come sixth, and we're sitting around 10th for the large majority of the season. So if any, arguably those numbers are even more impressive. But obviously Jackson played every minute of every game essentially, which Drogba didn't, because at the time he still had Good Johnson. So there was less direct pressure of Drogba is the guy that needs to perform and deliver. But you just say Potter did well? I didn't say that. I just said when we signed Potter, I'm not sure if that's what you're referring to, there was things to like be optimistic about when we did our research about what it's gonna be now. Anyway, like I say, you would expect Jackson to take a significant step up, really, for it now being his second season. But then you also saw for Senegal, he had a shocking miss and also injured his ankle quite seriously. So now we don't even know when he's going to be back fit. So where do you stand in the striker situation? If you want to touch on Osimhen again as well, please do. And obviously we're with Sesko before we look at potential other options.
Yeah, I mean, I would have gone with Osimhen. I would. I know there's a big sort of hoo-ha about his price and wages, but I think our wage policy limits a lot of potential signings as well. I think we can't put our hat in as many rings for signings because of our strict wage policy. I would have gone for him. I would have paid the money personally. I think he's hitting his prime years in terms of age as well. I think he's got a lot of experience in Europe as well. So I would have gone with Osimhen. I think he suits us well in terms of being that box striker, elite at heading. Good finisher, presses really well. I would have gone for him, but he's not happening. So another striker I would have gone for is Gyökeres. I think he's an absolute goal machine. He's a bit of a beast. He's very, very strong, but he's also quite quick for his size. Very good finisher. got fantastic movement, has played in England as well in the Championship, which I think is an underrated league to buy from. So yeah, I think he's just been a natural sort of goal scorer throughout his career wherever he's been. So I would have also gone for him. But in terms of Sesko, I mean, I was definitely warming up to him. Sesko's got fantastic ball striking. I think he's got a lot of potential. He's a bit of a freak athlete as well for his size. He's 6'5" and he's very, very quick. Kind of similar to Haaland in a sense. And he's very two-footed. I was watching a lot of videos from him, and I actually had to ask my chat when I was streaming before.
Which is a stronger foot?
I was like, what foot's this guy? Because all of his goals were both footed. Like, it was crazy. It was like he didn't have a weak foot, and that was very. That's one of the most underrated things I think in a player. If you're that two-footed, like if you're two-footed, you're like, yeah, you got my list load because it
elevates dramatically.
Yeah, like you know how many times Jackson last season got into great positions and tried to cut back on his right foot. It really annoyed me. But now, I mean, I might stick with Jackson, to be honest. I'm a massive fan of him. I really am. I think 14 Premier League goals, a very good return in your first season with all that pressure on him as well. Like, it's kind of crazy how much pressure he had on him last season. I think remember the Brentford at home game where he was kind of like arguing with the fans because one of the fans called him shit or something when he went down the tunnel. They said something to him, and you know, other strikers like Morata. That would have broke them, you know. And Jackson,
you certainly can't question Jackson's mentality.
He's got a good mentality. So, you know, attitude-wise, there's been a couple of incidents this season, but I like him. You know, I think he's a bit of a shithouse sometimes. So, I quite like it. I do like it. So yeah, I mean, for me, it's just what I don't like about this transfer window is that I think the striker market, for one, isn't very good, and two, well, it is good, but we're not going for the good ones, in my opinion, like the truly good ones, or we've missed out on the truly good ones. And two is like, I think Chelsea are going to sign a lot of players and decide on these positions before we actually see pre-season games. So before, we used to see a pre-season game or two, and we used to think, yeah, no, we need that position because he's not. No, we don't like that. Like, let's go and get someone else. Whereas now, I feel like we're going to get the striker no matter what before our first pre-season games are like right at the end of July. We're going to have a striker before then. So we're not going to be able to. I'm not going to be able to turn around and tell you, actually, Laurenz, I think just keep Jackson and Nkunku because I like that in pre-season. No, we're not going to do that this summer. The club are going to decide. So I don't really know what to say. Like, I don't know if I want to keep Nkunku and Jackson because I haven't seen Nkunku up front in Maresca's system, and I won't get to see that because we'll have decided by then.
Or we won't see if first game of pre-season Maresca starts Nkunku at left wing all of a sudden, and we're like, okay, well then we clearly need a striker if he's not even an option there, or not like the main option anyway.
Elements of the unknown, unfortunately. So you know, when people ask me stuff, I'm like, well, a lot of it is I don't know because you know we're basically going off what he's done at Leicester. And he is very, very strict in his system and his style of play. But, you know, like he does like this 3-2-5 on the ball.
But first of all, that, and, you know, he might be strict in his system, but our sporting directors and owners seem to be stricter in, you know, you don't get to pick, so make do with these players. And I know for one thing, they're not going to be happy if Nkunku doesn't play or if Enzo doesn't play. They're not going to accept that. So he's going to have to find a way to make these players fit his system.
Absolutely. So yeah, it's like from that sense, you know, I don't really know what to do in the position like the striker, to be honest.
It is a really, really tricky one. It's a big question. I find Gyökeres, I would have found him very interesting. I've seen a lot of people tell me that he has a lot of similarities to Jackson in his play style, but obviously I think everyone agrees that his finishing is much better. The problem is just for who he is and what he is. If he has a lot of similarities to Jackson, I know, plus better finishing, and finishing is arguably the most important trait for a striker. But he's still, like, his release clause is so expensive. Like, what was it, 100 million euros, wasn't it? So, like, I don't know. It's just, like, because of the structure that we have at the club and the types of players that we look at and that we want to potentially sign, if we signed him last season from the Championship, fair dues. Do you know what I mean? But, like, doesn't it go against everything we're trying to do to sign a Gyökeres right now after not signing him when he was cheap and now signing him a year later? Like that, Gyökeres would be a Roman Abramovich style signing where you're like, well, you could argue even not quite good enough to be a Roman Abramovich signing. But in terms of we let other people, do the development, get them cheap. We don't care if we pay over the odds. We just get them when they're ready. That's what it would feel like a little bit if we get Gyökeres right now. And I'm just not sure if we're financially in the position to spend that much on Gyökeres when he's not that different to Jackson. Like, the thing with Osimhen is, as much as the problem with Osimhen is obviously he didn't have a particularly great season. But at least he would have been a very different kind of striking option. So spending that much would have at least made a bit more sense. I don't know about you, but that was my only kind of drawback with Gyökeres. And Joel asks, is Osimhen definitely off the cards? Well, that's what it sounds like. I think Fabrizio and Ornstein and whoever, like all the big ones, said Ornstein isn't happening, right?
What's that?
Yeah, all the big sources said Osimhen definitely isn't happening, right?
Yeah, no, he's been ruled out. I think the only chance we go back for him is if we're really struggling on striker, he doesn't move anywhere, and maybe he lowers his wage demands and the price goes down a bit. But I don't see that happening.
It's just the only thing that would make sense is because obviously Conte has now gone there, and Conte seems to really want Lukaku. So, like, it seems like an obvious transfer, but we're not going for it. So, it is what it is, I suppose. But yeah, let's look at the potential other options that we have now recently been linked with. And I guess because someone mentioned it earlier, look at Nathan Gissing's retweet. Well, he retweeted a tweet from himself from January. He retweeted it just earlier when at the time 20-year-old Aston Villa striker Jhon Duran has been discussed internally at Chelsea recently as a potential short-term option this month. Colombian, young. Was it against Arsenal when he all of a sudden scored a brace towards the end of the season? Was that the game when everyone was all of a sudden, oh, maybe he is actually better than we all thought when this rumor initially came out? Where do you stand on Duran? Like, it's not exactly a signing that would get me off my seat, I can't lie. But where do you stand on it?
Just keep Datro Fofana, honestly. Just keep Datro Fofana. I don't see the point in signing this guy. I think he's got very good ball striking, but that's about it. I don't see, like Matt Law says in the article, that apparently he's rated as one of the brightest prospects. By who? I've not heard anything by anyone. There's no well, where's that come from? Chelsea's data team. I mean, to be fair to them, all their signings, individually, or most of them, I'd say have been really good or quite good. I believe in a lot of the signings we've made, but at the end of the day, apparently they want 35, 40 million for this guy. He scored 8 goals for Aston Villa since they've signed him. Get out of here with that. Ridiculous. I would pay 20 million tops for him. Yeah. What's the point in signing him, though? I don't get it. Because, say he comes in and does well, does decent.
Is he that much better than Broja? Do you know what I mean?
We've had enough of decent, Laurenz. We've had enough of decent.
Exactly.
If you're going to sign a striker, sign someone that replaces Jackson, or adapt this stupid model and sign someone experienced who doesn't get in the way.
Or sign someone who's a different type of striker, but similarly as good as Jackson, so you have multiple options. Even if it's not a clear replace him, give us someone that's of a somewhat similar level. Because like we said earlier, Jackson will probably take another step up. So, we were with him already not that far off top 4, right? Now we should have a better system, a better manager. So there is some logic to it. I get it, but that doesn't mean you need to go for someone like this. Do you know what I mean? I'm like you. I'm like, why? I know there was, like I said, this Arsenal game where everybody, opened their eyes to him a little bit. But like you just said, 8 goals in since he's gone to Villa. How long has he been at Villa? Was it just this season or has it been longer than that?
I actually don't know. I think he's played 36 games and scored 8 goals, but a lot of them, most of them are off the bench. So.
Okay, but is that league games? Yeah,
he scored 2 off the bench against Liverpool. Yeah, towards the end in the game you was referencing.
Liverpool then, not Arsenal. Yeah, there you go.
One was a freak goal, but the other one was a good goal. He's got good ball striking. I will give him that. He's got good shot on it.
Yeah, really. I mean, like you said, if you got him for 20 mil and you're getting him as the almost third choice striker behind Jackson and Nkunku, sure. But again, is he that much better than Broja? I was very much a fan of Broja before he went out to Fulham. But then I'm like, well, mate, if you can't even get your place at Fulham, what are you doing here? As much as I like him and I want to keep academy players, there are certain standards that need to be met, and he just hasn't met them. But it's still, my question still remains: is Duran that much better than Broja is? I really don't know, and then I just don't see the point in putting money on there. Like, I don't know, especially when you say 40 million. I don't know. Obviously, there has been links to a couple of others. I mean, I guess as I touch on Armando Broja there are talks that he could be going to Everton, but only if they can raise funds first. But there's also talk about, ownership takeover at Everton. So God knows what kind of, how that could change things. But yeah, other names that we have been linked to, let me just get the right tweet up. Maybe it's even a stretch to say have been linked to, because it's been, the way I took it, one source from Argentina that has seriously linked us to Julian Alvarez. But they have claimed that Chelsea have made it known that they will make a proposal in the next few days. But this is a few days old already. This is from the 7th of June. Today is the 11th of June. Well, certainly nothing has happened since, and not a single soul has reported on it since. But usually, Gaston is quite reliable when it comes to Argentina stuff, isn't it? Like when we go back to all the Enzo stuff a couple of years ago. Do you see any chance in this happening? And whether you do or not, would you want it to happen at all?
I don't think it will happen, but I think if we really pushed for it, I think it could be something like maybe we wait on, get some sales first, and then maybe go in with an offer or something. Because
could be like a late August signing.
Yeah, I do think it's one that could happen if we actually like put money towards it. And we actually pursued it, because I think he wants to play more football. His best friends
Which is weird because he started 31 games last season.
Yeah, I know, but maybe it's more up front. He doesn't play up front
exactly.
when he comes on, so he's clearly unhappy with something that Man City. Because the brief is he wants to play more. So, I think this could also be agent driven as well, to sort of get to Man City a little bit. I don't know. Maybe Man City have discussions and kind of, I don't know. Like he's not happy with something, and maybe it's just a ploy to sort of throw Chelsea, PSG, the clubs that want a striker in there, and then sort of get Man City's tail up a little bit and think actually we need to act on this situation, because they
just quickly, by the way, how weird is it? I know PSG are losing Mbappe and everything, but why did they need a striker? They spent 100 million or whatever on Gonzalo Ramos last season, and 100 million or whatever nearly on Colomwani, who are both strikers. Why did they need another one? It makes no sense.
They've both been asked. That's why.
Yeah, exactly. No, I know, but it's just terrible planning, really. Would you want Julian Alvarez? Would he be someone you'd like at Chelsea?
Not really. No, I'm not. I'm not a massive fan, to be honest with you. I don't know. Like for the price it cost, I think he'd cost probably 70 million plus. I don't think I'd sign him for that. I don't think his finishing is as good as people say it is. He's not exactly explosive quick. Like the comparison to Aguero is just the most stupid thing I've ever heard in my life. They're nothing alike, to be honest with you. Even his first touch is kind of arse when I'm just not a massive fan of him from what I've seen at City. I think he's kind of overrated, to be honest.
I mean, I see that. Obviously, when a club like City buy you for, I can't remember how much it was, but it was quite significant for what City paid for him from River Plate a couple of years ago. And then, like, Pep doesn't play that many youngsters very soon if they're not very good. Like, even think back to like Phil Foden. How long did it take for Pep to start playing Foden regularly? Like a lot of people at the time were complaining. Now people think, okay, he actually got it spot on. But still, Pep doesn't do that with many players. The fact that he got Alvarez in and kind of, I know obviously was backup to Haaland, but that's flipping fair play. I mean, being backup to Haaland, 18 million, yeah. I don't know. I see what you're saying. Honestly, I couldn't necessarily nothing in my brain says you're right or you're wrong in terms of his first touch. Honestly, I just don't have that much that clear of an opinion on it where I'm sure of what I think. But I do think stylistically, from what you said earlier, if Nkunku being the striker suits us, Alvarez being the striker suits us. Do you know what I mean? Like that type of striker. Because my main issue is like, okay, well, we've got Jackson, who's already the kind of playmaker type striker who has finishing issues. I'm not saying Alvarez necessarily has finishing issues, but even still, he's more of a link-up striker than he is a poacher striker, and getting on the end of things, especially aerially, because he's not tall at all. So it wouldn't really give us a significantly different dimension up front. That's maybe the only drawback. But I would say, I don't know, there's a few things where it's like, I just think Chelsea are in a little bit of a position where it's not only about how good is a player, it's also a bit about how do things look to the outside. I know that isn't necessarily the way things should work. And I know that isn't the way that sporting directors work at all. I'm aware. But I do just feel we need to be like, because I'm not as confident as the sporting directors that we will get top 4 next season. And if we fail again, the slippery slope to going from being one of the elite clubs in the world to being in permanent mediocrity for 5 years upwards is that slope is more slippery than people think, I feel like. And if you keep only signing your Durans and God knows which left back we might be looking at, and God knows which goalkeepers. No, well, apparently we're not getting a goalkeeper now, but got all these types of players. If you're not getting anyone big, it's just that I feel like that slippery slope comes even closer, if that makes sense, because like I feel like that's the only thing that saved us over the last 2 years, if that makes sense, right? Signing Enzo, signing Mudryk, signing Caicedo. We were so bad, but those spending that money on these players that the other big clubs, Liverpool, Arsenal, all of these clubs wanted, but still getting them is kind of what kept us in the mix while we were still playing badly. So if we stop signing these types of players, but keep playing badly, then like how far are we from turning into what happened to Arsenal after leaving Highbury? I mean, that's the bit that I worry about. And I know obviously Olise is a bit of a name like that, but you're still getting him from Palace. You're still not exactly, getting him from a rival. So yeah, those outside factors are things that I think matter a little bit. But like you, I just don't see it as realistic. I just don't think we're going to pay the money that Man City realistically will want for Alvarez. And also the type of player he is. I'm not like, if Nkunku will be a striker option, it would almost also be stupid to because I have that's one of my biggest concerns about Maresca, right? Where on earth is Nkunku going to play? Because if we're actually going to play 4-3-3 and not 4-2-3-1, I don't really think Nkunku permanently will be or should be an 8. I really don't think he should permanently be a winger in Maresca's system who likes his wingers to stay wide. I really don't think that would be suitable to Nkunku at all, personally. So therefore, that's why everybody's saying if Nkunku works anywhere, really, in the system, it's going to be the false 9. But if you then spend big on a striker like Alvarez, you've wasted Nkunku, no? Or like that's my only issue, because I'm like, well, we need to put Nkunku somewhere. The reports have come out that Chelsea finally believe in it, and they think next season's going to be great, blah, blah, blah. But it's not going to work if you spend huge on a striker. Do you think maybe that's also part of the consideration why we decided against Osimhen, why we decided against Gyökeres? Because if not at striker, where on earth wouldn't Nkunku play?
Yeah, I mean, it's very true. Something I was going to mention as well about Nkunku and Alvarez. I think they're very similar profiles. So,
yeah.
Nkunku for me, I mean, I've had this debate, on Twitter or my streams. I think he's an interesting one. He's probably the player I'm looking forward to seeing, or I'm most intrigued to seeing where Maresca puts him in pre-season, because at the end of the day, you look at the sort of setup he does on the ball. You kind of have 3 centre-backs. You have the right back inverting, so maybe it's Enzo Reece. Then you have probably Palmer as a number 8. Say we get Olise on the right. You've got Caicedo in the middle with Palmer. And then you've got a left and a striker. So who's the left-sided player? You've still got Sterling, Mudryk at the club. From everything I've heard, Maresca likes true wide players. So it would lean more towards a Mudryk or a Sterling over Nkunku. So for me, the only place that makes sense at the moment is kind of this false 9. But Chelsea want a striker. So I'm very confused, to be honest.
That's the only thing. Like, obviously, about Maresca, people say he almost always plays a 4-2-3-1. A 4-3-3. But he has also played 4-2-3-1. But the thing is, obviously, in possession, it's more of a 3-2-5 or 3-2-4-1. Could he then be one of the 4 behind the 1? But centrally, yes, he could be that. But the problem is how it shifts when you're off the ball. And then you want Nkunku in those positions. On the ball, that position is perfectly fine for Nkunku, I think. But then when it transitions and we're off the ball, then I'm not sure if that suits him very much. And then if you're not getting the best out of him, what on earth is the whole point? Do you know what I mean? Like, if we're not getting the best out of Nkunku, we have failed as an institution. Not that we haven't already failed as an institution, but like he's the one somewhat experienced, somewhat more senior signing that we've made. And first of all, he's been injured constantly. And now if we don't find a way to play him regularly, well, then we're ruined anyway, aren't we? Yeah, it's a tough one. But moving on from Julian Alvarez, one other name that has been mentioned by Matt Law today, as Chelsea's striker list may also include former academy graduate Dominic Solanke, who has a £65 million release clause. That part was not fully news to me. I feel like I heard this before, but I kind of forgot about it because that's the problem. Now, it's a similar situation to Duran. Is Solanke better than Duran? Probably. But 65 million. I mean, you need to be getting in the bin with that if you're even considering paying 65 million for Solanke. Surely you agree with that, right?
I think the price is very hefty, although I don't know if any of you guys know Monster CFC. He's quite sort of an OG on Chelsea Twitter. He came on, we were talking about this on my stream a couple of hours ago. He came on and he was arguing for Solanke for this price as well. He said you would not get this is probably the price, that's the sort of minimum price you pay for someone who scores 19 goals in the Premier League. So,
and he's not wrong with that. Of course he's not wrong with that. But,
Yeah, I mean, I didn't really have too many counter arguments apart from that I personally wouldn't do it. So
yeah, exactly. That's it. It's not like it's ridiculous that, first of all, if he has that release clause, why would Bournemouth let him go for less than that? If you're them, why would you? But especially, like I said, if you score 19 goals in the Prem, how many people do that? But it's just like, I mean, supposedly we're looking there's a few other, potential former academy graduates that we may also be looking at in the future or now or whenever. But I don't know. I've been playing a Chelsea career mode on FIFA, and for about now I was like, okay, let me bring Tammy back. Maybe I should have brought Dominic Solanke back, to keep it closer to reality. Is Solanke really better than Broja? Now, yes, at youth level,
let's be serious. He's better. He's much better than Broja. Let's be serious, guys.
Yes, but at that age, did he have better numbers? Absolutely not. Because Solanke is now what, 25, 26?
He's 26, I think.
Exactly, he's 26. So Broja is still 21, isn't he?
Yeah, Broja's still young. It's true.
22 to be fair. So he actually turns 23 in September. So I'm not that young anymore. But still, he's missed a year out of his whole development for the ACL as well. We can't completely ignore it either. And what was Solanke doing when he first left us? He played for Liverpool. Like, the guy played 3 years of Premier League football and didn't score a single Premier League goal. People like to forget that about Solanke. Like, he played for Liverpool for a year or two, didn't score a single goal. And then he went to Bournemouth and also didn't score a single goal for them, and they got relegated. And then in the Championship, he kind of found his feet, stayed at Bournemouth, went back up, and now he's kind of working for him. But this is what sometimes people forget about these other players. Like, Broja might not be great now, but Solanke didn't look great at 22 either. That's all I'm saying. Now, Connor says much better than Broja, not a question. I agree. But again, he went 3 years without scoring a single Prem goal. Imagine Broja did that. Imagine. That's all I'm saying. But yeah, 65 mil is just a bit much, isn't it? Like, I don't know. But yeah, at youth level, he was so far better, even than Tammy. Like, I think there was a season at youth level when Solanke was like 17 or 18, where he scored over 60 goals a season. Like, that far outweighed even Tammy's numbers and all these other young. Like, at that age, he was like the shit, if that makes sense. But yes, like, it's like the modern day Benteke. Bit harsh. But yeah. Would you prefer Solanke over Duran, especially when Duran supposedly costs 40 million and Solanke costs 65 million? I'd probably then prefer Solanke, but I just prefer neither, if that makes sense.
Yeah, literally the same as me. Literally the same, isn't it?
Yeah, I don't really know what much else I can say. Yeah, there is part of me that, you know me, Pies. I like an academy player. Part of me is like, it would just be funny to like sell all of the ones that we have and get an old one in instead. But first of all, I don't see it happening. And second of all, I'm not really sure if it would be the best idea anyway. So I guess that is that. But one thing that we do need to talk about is, I guess, the big one, and you touched on it earlier already, the one that looks like most likely to happen as a big one. Let me just find the appropriate tweet about it. Michael Olise from Crystal Palace, of course. We had a report that we had an agreement with him last year already. And then obviously all the drama happened and Palace were like, well, you approached him without our consent. So you weren't supposed to know about this release clause. So now we're going to threaten to sue you. And then we pulled out because we got scared. And now here we are and would potentially get him for a lot more than it would have been last year. But still being 60 million for how talented and how sought after he is, not a ridiculous price. Again, especially if you compare Dominic Solanke, potentially costing 65 million. Then getting Olise for 60 million really ain't that bad. But yeah, according to Fabrizio Romano, Chelsea are really pushing and insisting for Olise. They want to bring as many players in before July. In the next days, there are discussions planned with both Chelsea and Manchester United to discuss how they want to proceed this transfer. There was another bit about Olise. Let me just see if I can find that one. Where is it? I do have it ready somewhere. Oh yeah, there you go. The Athletic has reported that for any parties interested in Olise, it was supposedly said we need to first strike a deal with Palace and then agree with the players' camp. But I have a question with this price. Doesn't he now have a release clause that everybody knows about? So what on earth is there to sort with Palace if you're not just unless you're trying to get it without the release clause and slightly different terms, then sure. But if you're planning to trigger the release clause, what do you need to sort with Palace beforehand?
Because I think Olise himself has to trigger the release clause.
Yeah, true. Actually, I did hear that, yeah.
So yeah, it's like a weird, I don't know, like the intricacies of it, but I think it's like to protect Palace to make sure no one goes behind their back or something. I don't know, because they were clearly salty about that last season. So yeah, I think you have to go to Palace first and say, look, we want to trigger it, and then they tell Olise, and Olise can decide whether he wants to go to whatever club comes forward, I guess. So yeah,
exactly. But it does seem like Olise personally is still interested in joining Chelsea. I mean, it would almost be a bit strange if he wasn't, considering he seemingly was all over it last year. His brother obviously plays at the Chelsea Academy. I forget his first name, but obviously also Olise. He's a top player, really. Like, he's a top player. And he's a great player for what we're kind of looking for, because I think I still am on the edge, on the verge of, is Palmer really a right winger, especially if he's in this Maresca system, supposedly to stay out wide more permanently rather than having this extremely free role that he had on the pitch. So if you could play Palmer as an 8, which I firmly believe Palmer can do, and you have Olise wide and then it can interchange every now and again, I like how that sounds. I like how that sounds, and it looks like it could happen. You said it there earlier. There's the way things looking right now. If we get a big signing, it's most likely going to be Olise, right?
Yeah, I reckon so, right? I mean, if we miss out on Olise, I'm done with this window already. Like, honestly, like Olise for me, just at least get Olise, at least get one. Like for me, he's one of the top wingers in the Premier League. Like, he is a very, very good player. Obviously has some injury concerns, but I was listening to Alex Goldberg's stream last night, and he actually said he kind of debunked this injury theory, because on Transfer Market they basically included, like, one of his big injuries they included from June, when obviously the season's over, and he brought up this statistic where I think he's been available for like a crazy actually amount of matches throughout his last season. So when he's not as injury prone as people say. So yeah, I think Olise would be a fantastic signing. I mean, him, Palmer, and Kunku in the same team. If that works, like, he's honestly, it could be breathtaking at times. Like, Olise is a top player, amazing creatively, and he's also got very good finishing as well, good shooting. Another set piece taker as well, so just adds another option for us. Free kicks, corners, like, he's a top player. I wouldn't want to miss out on him personally.
Yeah, well, what Mickey says here is true. They get injured at the under 21s Euro, so it's like, obviously these tournaments are kind of always in the middle. Does it count to last season? Does it count to next season? It's a bit of a tricky one. I mean, Vic seems to be very adamant that we're not getting Olise. He said that multiple times here in the chat while we've been live. Says at least 2 clubs in for Olise. We have to overpay for him, and I don't see owners doing that again. I think you're slightly off the market. It seems like we've already laid a lot of groundwork for Olise, mate, in terms of that he already chose us essentially a year ago. That does play a role, even for Caicedo. If we didn't do the groundwork for Caicedo, when Liverpool came in for him, there's every chance Caicedo might have picked Liverpool. Now, sure, because he seems to have grown up a Chelsea fan, that I'm sure helped. But what played the biggest role is doing the groundwork beforehand. And we have that groundwork beforehand for Olise as well. I'm not saying with Man United there's nothing there either, but don't forget, Manchester United may be the only big club in the world that is even in a bigger mess than we are. Like, they seem to not really want to keep Ten Hag, but everyone's saying no to them, including Thomas Tuchel. Cheers, Thomas. We appreciate it. They're almost in a situation like Bayern, and now they're like, okay, potential new players want to know who's going to be your manager, who is not. And like Joe says, London plays a role. Olise is of course officially a French international, but he's from London. His brother plays at Chelsea. Those Barcelona maybe is one to mention that is nearly in as big a mess as we are, but they've missed Champions League once. We've already missed it twice. So yeah, I agree with you, Pys. I would be all for Olise. Obviously, if it turns out to be a situation where we need to overpay over the release clause and we need to buy him for like 80, 90, 100 million, then maybe it becomes a slightly different conversation. But while it seems to be that 60 million release clause, honestly, if we can, we'd be idiots not to get him. So yeah, I'm gonna keep my optimism and hope that we will be able to make that happen in the end. But yeah, there you go. I mean, I guess now that I mention it, I could bring that one up as well, Pies. I'm sure you were buzzing as well when all of a sudden the news came out from Fabrizio that former Chelsea manager Thomas Tuchel has decided not to take the Manchester United job. At least for once, good news, because I feel like we don't get that good news that often in recent weeks and months and years. For once, good news, right?
I mean, there was something from the Times, though, that said that actually Tuchel had a feeling he wasn't going to be first choice, so he decided to say no. So perhaps he would have joined there if he was first choice. I mean, he's been, twerking for the Premier League. But look, I mean, I'll take Fab's report as gospel, and
Yeah, exactly. If Fabrizio is wrong, we need to just all block him.
Yeah, super Tommy Tuchel. Thank you.
Exactly. Appreciate it very much. I still don't know what he's going to do in the future because I still don't really see him not doing anything. So, yeah, I don't know. He's not going to get Real Madrid, is he? He's not going to get Barcelona. So, what is he going to do? Like, he's not going to go back to PSG. I guess Italy, like somewhere maybe he'll take over from Inzaghi at Inter potentially. I guess the system would kind of suit him a little bit. To what they've already been doing for a while anyway. But yeah, maybe not now. Maybe at some point he will still end up in the Prem. But for now, we can at least be happy that doesn't seem to be happening. Just to go through a few more pieces of smaller news that have come out across a few days. Bluco, according to Fabrizio, one step away from signing Pedro Lima, a right back from Brazil, and he would join Strasbourg next season. There was a lot of people that are losing their minds a little bit. How much will he cost? Like 40 million or whatever it was?
40.
Oh, what was the price for him? Maybe I remember wrong.
For Lima, he's like £7 or £8 million.
Oh, okay. I remember it completely wrong then. There you go. Well, even still, I've seen a lot of people losing their minds already. Wow, we're signing another young kid, especially a right back. We've got Reece and Gusto. I don't know about you, but for me, the fact that this says Bluco and then this says he would be joining Strasbourg, like, I know we're running a multi-club model, but people seem to not realize that Chelsea aren't going to be the only club in this multi-club model making signings. Like, Strasbourg will also make signings. Like, I don't know their squad. Maybe they need a right back. Do you know what I mean? Like, this will not touch the Chelsea budget. This will not touch the Chelsea financial fair play or PSR rules. This is just a Strasbourg signing. I'm sure if he turns out amazing and Reece James still hasn't managed to stay fit for more than a week, then I'm sure in 2 years or whatever, we might transfer him from Strasbourg to Chelsea. I'm sure we will do that. Just like Red Bull do that from Salzburg to Leipzig many times. Even though they officially do transfer fees, it's essentially money from one account into the other account. But is that how you see it as well? I know Fabrizio said with the future, look to play for Chelsea. But for now, this is a Strasbourg signing and not exactly something that Chelsea fans should be losing their minds over, right?
Yeah, I mean, look, I just can't be bothered to sort of like overanalyze every single signing we make. Like,
we just made too many, innit? Yeah. Like, we used to be able to do that, but nowadays,
look, I mean, like the likes of Castaday, Fofana, like we already heard news from the Athletic, and I'd heard the same that we may consider offers for Dacho Fofana. Everyone lost their minds when we signed him. Look, they're trying to sell players for profit, and the best ones.
Let's see if we get profit though.
Yeah, I mean, but if we want to sell them, we clearly think we can get some sort of profit. So if they want to do that, then let them do it. And as long as the first team signings are good, I don't really care, to be honest.
Yeah, there you go. Fair enough. Fair enough. To bring up a different piece of news, that was interesting. That came out, I think, yesterday. Oh, that was the wrong one. I guess might as well bring this one up first. That was actually today. Chelsea are not interested in selling or loaning Andre Santos next season. Santos has been earmarked to stay at Chelsea and is seen as a great fit for how Maresca wants to play as a number 6 or a number 8. Thoughts with having obviously Caicedo, having Enzo, having Lavia, having in theory Ugo Chukwu, but the fact that we allowed him to go to the Olympics and not any of the others, suggests to me that maybe he will, for example, go out to Strasbourg next season, maybe potentially. Yeah, thoughts on this one? Do you think it's a good idea? I just think, I mean, I think he's good enough. I'm just not sure we will have the, like, other than Conference League, what game time would he get? And is that fruitful? Wouldn't it be better off playing a year fully regularly and every week at Strasbourg?
I don't mind this, to be fair. I think he's a really good player.
Yeah,
I liked him in the first preseason, even when we saw him. I thought he looked quite nice.
Look miles better than Custard did, let's be real.
Yeah, I mean, he's good technically, right? Like, I agree with this report. I don't know if you're going to bring the Chalobah one up, but compared to what they said about Chalobah, they're correct on this thinking. I do think he can play as a number 6 or an 8. I always thought he's better as a 6. I quite like him picking the ball up. I think he's good. Very good technically. He's got a good touch, I like it. I think he will play a fair bit. He may even play some Carabao or FA Cup, with Lavia. I think them two could be good. Carney as well. So I think Ugo Chukwueze will probably go on loan and maybe Casadei gets sold or vice versa. But I think, I rate Santos the highest out of like him, Casadei and Ugo Chukwueze personally. So yeah, I liked him in pre-season. I thought he was way too good for Strasbourg. Like every time I looked at Strasbourg player ratings or whatever, or like he was winning awards left, right, and centre. He clearly needed a Prem loan. Obviously, Nottingham Forest wasn't good, but it wasn't his fault. He hardly got a chance. So
but isn't looking good and being the best at Strasbourg actually really good? Like, then that guarantees game time, that guarantees focus, that guarantees, also because if you're the main guy, that creates more pressure. And pressure is one of the things that these kind of young kids need to learn to deal with before being ready for Chelsea, if that makes sense. So I don't personally see it as a bad thing, being the best player at Strasbourg personally. But I do see where you're coming from there. I do see it. But yeah, I mean, I wouldn't mind. Like, I just hope that, we've made many decisions about who should stay, who should come back. Like, we recalled Casadei on loan in January for absolutely no reason whatsoever. Like, he played 3 minutes, essentially. So, like, if it's one of those, like, we decide not to loan out Andre Santos for him to end up playing about 2 games all season, well, then it would be a bad idea, I guess. But yeah, someone said in the chat to bring up Simon Johnson's tweet in terms of Pedro Lima. He says Chelsea's priority is to sign a striker, but the next deal agreed looks set to be Pedro Lima. Well, he makes it look more like it's a Chelsea thing rather than a Strasbourg thing. But yeah, Chelsea's priority is to sign a striker. Just interesting, because that to me doesn't scream that they think Nkunku is seen as a striker in this system. Like, doesn't it being a priority to sign a striker, doesn't that make it sound like that to you?
Who knows, mate? I don't know where Nkunku's going to play, to be honest with you. I have no idea.
That's my worry, that no one knows.
I have no idea what Maresca's going to do. I mean, maybe Reece actually plays as a right centre back in game rather than inverting. Maybe Caicedo inverts with Enzo and it actually forms like a 2 midfield, and then you have Palmer and Nkunku as sort of further forward. But I think that's too attacking. I think you've got to have Caicedo
You
up
might
there.
do that some games, but not every game.
Yeah, I mean, against low blocks, it's all right if you want to change it in game, but starting like that, I think it'd be quite risky. So yeah, I don't know. Like, it's hard when you've got a new manager you don't know a lot about, because you can't really, like, what, I don't know. Like, we don't really know what he's going to do. So
no, I agree.
Yeah,
I do agree. You brought it up there. A report on Trevor Chalobah, which I think also came out today, if I'm not mistaken. Yes, it was this morning. A report from The Athletic. Chelsea do not believe Trevor Chalobah suits Enzo Maresca's style, method of playing out from the back. Like, what?
it's funny.
Like, it's just what? He suits it 3 trillion times better than fucking Axel Disasi does, you absolute dickheads. Do you know what I mean?
Look, I genuinely thought this was like a typo or something. Like, I looked at this morning, like, I had to get up. I had a scan this morning at the doctor, so maybe I thought they'd like already put some shit into my body and I was reading my phone wrong or something, because I was like, I was reading this, I was like, what? Like, Chalobah can't play at the back? Like, passing's one of the things he's best at. Like, all of them nonsense. Like, this is club PR bullshit. Like, honestly, like, this is hilarious. Like, how can you possibly think this?
Yeah.
Like, I don't get it. Maybe you can question.
Just trying to make the fans less upset when we sell him.
That's it's like, here's the reason, guys. Here's the reason. Yet we actually watch the games and know that Chalobah's good on the ball. I mean, this is so fun. Like, what are they on about? Whoever believes this inside the club should just get fired immediately. Like, what a load of bullshit.
Literally. Like, it's just the whole thing. Like, Chalobah is under 3 different managers, not supposed to be first choice. Well, it wasn't necessarily first choice on the menu, but it was under 3 managers supposed to not be involved in the plans much. And under 3 managers, he played himself into the team to an extent where he started a lot of games by the end. 3 different managers. 3 different managers that are to some better than others. All different styles of play. How you sit like if they sit there and say, okay, we've spent, like, just be honest. I don't understand why they can't just be honest. Like, everyone understands logic, right? Like, men are creatures of logic, stereotypically. Of course, there's always exceptions to every rule. And the majority of football fans are men. So if they just went there and said to us, okay, guys, I know you want to keep the academy players. We get it. But the problem is, we've spent quite a lot of money these last 2 years. Unfortunately, the success on the pitch didn't quite follow the way we would have hoped. And therefore, we now need to, sell certain players to make up for big spending while we didn't get the extra revenue for qualifying for the Champions League, for potentially securing bigger sponsors, all these types of things. If they just said that and was like, okay, that's why, unfortunately, we need to sell Trevor Chalobah, even though we don't necessarily want to, but we have to create funds. If they just said it as openly as that, as much as we would still be sad about it, or many of us would be sad about it, you couldn't really moan about it too much because, yeah, it's shit, but sometimes mistakes are made and then you need to rectify your own mistakes. Yeah, sure, in an ideal world, you wouldn't have made the mistake in the first place 2 years ago. I get it. But sometimes you make mistakes and then you need to rectify your mistakes. And unfortunately, selling academy players is part of how we rectify those mistakes. But coming out there and putting briefs out there like we don't think he's good enough to play out from the back. Stop trying to sell us for absolute idiots. Stop it. It's just like, maybe, I know Americans are stereotypically idiots, so maybe that's just how they think it. You do it, you tell the fans whatever, they buy whatever you tell them, and then it's fine. But is it? Is it? Because we all think they're incompetent already anyway. Like not a single Chelsea fan exists that has a brain capacity bigger than Johnny Minerals, thinks that they are competent. No one thinks that. And I know Johnny Minerals doesn't think that either. So even Johnny Minerals understands that they're not competent. So who? So, like, just say it as honestly as it is, and no one would have an issue with it. Don't you agree with that, Pies? Like, just if they just said, oh shit, we spend a bit too much money, we need to bring some cash back in. The academy players are, by the rules, unfortunately, the best people to do that with. So it is unfortunately what it is. Wouldn't that be much better?
100%. Yeah, just say we need to sell him to afford Olise or something, and now And by the way, the other thing is 25 million is an absolute disgrace if we're going to sell
100%.
him. Like, he's got to be at least minimum 40. He's got like 6 or 7 years left on his deal.
Exactly.
Like,
it's just so silly.
We signed Disassi for nearly 40 million pounds. Like, this is a crime. Honestly, this Chalobah deal is a crime. It's criminal, the stuff that's happening in this. Can't believe it.
Exactly, and that's the point, because Joel said now it would make teams offer less money if they said that. Valid.
Well, keep him then. Keep him, for God's sake.
First of all, keep him then. But like you said, we're already undervaluing him so drastically that no one would bid less than 25 million, because that's already the bargain of the flipping year. Do you know what I mean? Like, no one's going to complain about being charged 25 million for Trevor Chalobah. It's ridiculous, especially when supposedly clubs like Manchester United are interested. If Man United signed him, he walks into that Man United starting 11, in my opinion. It's not even close. He walks in there. He starts every game for me. If he just does. But hey, it is what it is. The last one that I want to quickly talk about with you, Pies, is a rumor that came out yesterday, which some people lost their minds over a little bit, because from our good friend Plettigol, who, well, let me just say it like this. Every journalist that covers Bayern Munich has had an absolute howler of a summer. So no matter what they say, chances are they're wrong, because they've said about everything they've said this summer has turned out wrong, really. Not necessarily always their fault, but still, it always turned out wrong, right? But yeah, according to him, Bayern Munich want to sign Levi Colwill, and the initial talks have taken place. The reports are that talks with Colwill's representatives has taken place. Yeah, it was reported by Fabrizio. We are not looking to sell him. The only something crazy would have to happen, like Colwill specifically asking to leave for us to even consider this. But I know supposedly initial talks have taken place, but how much does that mean? For me, I don't know about you, bro, but I don't think Levi Colwill wants. Like, why would Levi Colwill want to go from us to Bayern right now? I know we're a mess, but Bayern are also a mess. Do you know what I mean? Like, why? Like, and Harry Kane has just proven going to Bayern doesn't necessarily always mean you win trophies. So, like, why would you do that? Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't doubt that Bayern may be interested, but I very much doubt that it will happen. Do you agree?
Yeah, I mean, Fabrizio shut this one down pretty quickly. I mean, I don't know where all these Colwill links keep coming from, because constantly, like, what, it was PSG a couple of months ago, it was Liverpool the summer before, last summer, it's Bayern Munich now. Like, I don't know where all these links are coming from, but he just signed a new deal, so I think it's crazy, to be honest with you. Like, as you can see there, they've no plans at all to sell him. So I don't really understand where these links are coming from. And, I wouldn't sell him at all. I think, he definitely has the potential to be one of the best centre-backs in the league. I firmly believe that. So, yeah, I think next season, hopefully injury-free, no more playing left-back, and hopefully he'll ball out.
Yeah, that's the part I'm least sure about, the no more playing left-back, because, inverted, I think there's every chance that he could actually end up starting as left back. So obviously, they're not play left back all the time, but still, I wouldn't be shocked if he ends up starting as left back in quite a few games, surprisingly. But yeah, also something maybe to touch on. I won't have it ready as a picture now, but the pitch at the bridge, a bit of a mess, but people have supposedly said, Well, people have said that when you make a new pitch, or like you lay new fresh grass, if you do that, then the thing you tend to do is you let it die off first, and then you set the new grass. So that's the only explanation, because otherwise we've made ourselves look like an absolute embarrassment again yesterday by doing that. But yeah, another thing which I just realized now that I haven't actually spoken about on here, because like I said, I was traveling this weekend. We have made a signing that I've obviously spoken about on social media and stuff. So follow me on Twitter for thoughts sometimes when I'm not available to stream. But Chelsea have made a signing. Have made a free signing. Tosin, I forget his surname. Unfortunately, I need to work harder to remember. Tosin Adarabioyo. Tosin Adarabioyo. Obviously, English international, not international, English born. Is from England. Why am I being so difficult? He's 26, so he's not super young, but we've signed him on a 4-year deal. Just quickly, Pies, did the 4-year deal surprise you? That all of a sudden we're not giving out 7-year deals?
Well, he's 26, so when I thought about it, no, not really.
Yeah, no, it's true. It's true, actually.
If he was 22, he'd probably get a 7
How long
or
a
8
contract did Nkunku get? Do you know that?
I think it was 5 years, wasn't it? I think.
I don't remember. And obviously, he was at the time 24, I guess, when he signed it. But he signed it in advance for when he was 25. So whichever way it is. But yeah, Tosin looks like a decent player. We'll have to see how it goes, whether he's a regular starter or not. He seems to certainly be a character. He's, at least thinks of himself as a leader, and he's flipper massive. So, that's quite good because we do need some taller players. So him being 6'5" is a positive. But yeah, in general, is that a signing you're like looking forward to, or not really?
Bit 50-50, to be honest. I mean, I look forward to watching any new signing, to be fair. I always get the initial sort of, like intrigued to watch them. I've obviously watched him a bit in the Premier League. I think he's a decent player. Spoke to a few Fulham fans as well, had them speak to me about him, and they seem to rate him quite highly. Maybe some concentration issues sometimes, but seems to be very, very good on the ball. He's obviously a bit of a physical, beast, being 6'5", and one of the things they said as well is for his height is that he's very quick. So I like that. Seems to have
the season, obviously the 22-23 season, so the one before last, he was measured as the fastest centre back in the league, I think.
Yeah, the Fulham fans say like he's got like these big strides, so he covers ground quite quick. He's got like these big long giraffe legs that seem to get everything, they said. So a lot of their fans called him like the giraffe.
Like Zuma back, like peak Zuma. Well, I say peak Zuma, but Zuma before he did his knee in, right? He wasn't necessarily the fastest in acceleration because he's quite big. But then these guys with these long ass legs, man, they can cover distance and they can get up to speed. It's just their acceleration isn't the best. But if it's longer distances and you're like recovery defending, these boys are quick. So
yeah, that's what he's saying. Like they had a couple of like transitions last season where like the ball went over the top or something. and Tosin wasn't one-on-one, but he was running back and he actually like got to the attacker because he was so quick, like covering that ground from distance. So yeah, when you get into like the sort of not the acceleration, but like the full-on sprint speed, I think he's quite quick from what they were saying. So yeah, it should be a box presence as well. I mean, 6'5", you know, someone to actually finally aim at from corners for once. So if he plays,
Exactly.
you know,
Exactly. So that will be quite a good and positive thing. I'm going to leave it on a last note that only 4, or is it 5, players from Chelsea going to the Euros, which is obviously in a way a good thing because we have a new manager. So it's a positive that more of the players get to spend most of preseason with the new manager. But at the 2020 Euros, which then took place in 2021, we were the club with the most representatives at the tournament, and now we've got 5. So how far we have fallen. I think it's Gallagher, it's Palmer, it's Cucurella, and who else? Who am I forgetting?
On what?
Of Chelsea players that are gonna be at the Euros. Like Gallagher, Palmer, Petrovic, and no, I've said it already and I've forgotten it again. Cucurella. Is that all 4? Yeah, I think it is.
I think so.
Shocking. Absolutely shocking behavior. Absolutely shocking. And obviously you've got Caicedo, Enzo, and
CFCPys, if you want to include him, I guess.
If you want to. I'm a not because he's not. Oh yeah, Broja actually. Broja. But you know, we're selling him. So that doesn't really count. And Martin has now been called up in hindsight because Frankie de Jong got injured. So which don't fully get how a centre mid gets injured and you call up a left back, but just Coman doing Coman things, I suppose. But yeah, we fall from grace that we've taken down in terms of players that make it to these tournaments. But hey, here it is. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the end of our roundup today. I will try to bring as many of these as I can these next few weeks. On Thursday, I'm planning to do a big kind of Euro stream, like Euro's prediction. We will talk about who we think could do well and who might not. Regard like a bit of a less of a Chelsea deep dive from that perspective because barely anyone involved. So yeah, ladies and gentlemen, if you're looking forward to that, please do subscribe. Hit that like button on your way out if you have done so already. Please check out Pys. Link is down in the description, of course. Check out his website, LondonFirst.com. But I think nowadays, first and foremost, his Twitter with the link to his playback where he might jump back onto stream in a few minutes. So do check that out. Like I say, subscribe and hit that like button if you haven't done so already. But ladies and gentlemen, thank you guys for watching. Appreciate you all very much. It's upwards and onwards, but still also downwards and backwards until I'm sure who we're going to sign. And we will see you next time.